Alright, so I'm going to run quickly through how we plant carrot beds on this farm to make sure we get good germination and lots of carrots. Well, seeing as the first year we're doing no-till, we're having quite a lot of pressure from turning from pasture straight into a no-till system. So we've been using solarization to help with the weed pressure. So firstly we chuck a solarizing sheet on, leave it on for 24 hours or so, depending on how hot it is. It's been pretty wet, not ideal, but yesterday was hot, so we'll get that off. Solarization does a pretty good job of clearing the weeds, but it's not perfect, so I like to go through afterwards and just make sure everything's gone, make sure it's all hunky-dory. So I'll do that now. So once you've got the bed pretty clear of weeds, I like to go over it once more, just to get anything else with a oscillating hoe, just to make sure. It's good to have no competition for your carrots because they're very slow to germinate, so if you've got lots of competition it can be a real pain in the butt. As you can see, pretty clean now, pretty devoid of weeds. The solarizing works a treat, to be fair, although it's not the kindest thing on the soil life. So next step. So here I have some juice essentially from the worm bin. I don't know, it's quite hard to see, but it's extremely dark, extremely black, extremely rich. And I'm going to dilute that down and add it to the bed to put a bit of life back in the soil before we do the next step. Also a bit of moisture so that the seeds got something to cling on to as well. Then I like to come over with a rake to level the surface off a little bit so you can mark it out, which you'll understand why in a minute. So I'll quickly do that. So, giving it a raking over, and I do 5 rows of carrots on 30-inch beds, and in order to make that work, I use my rake and the drip line cut into sections, and I space it out evenly along the rake. Like so. Not the only person to do this, it's a very common way, but it works well. Low tech is sometimes the best option. We tried with a seeder and this just seems to work better. More ability to control how much seed you put and the spacing when you do it by hand. I mean, you just don't know when it blocks. For example, we've had rows not come up because the seeder blocked and you just didn't know, so I prefer this. So I'll do this quickly. So that's why you want the surface to be quite level. It's quite hard to see there for you, but I'll show you in a sec a bit closer up, but it works quite well. I'm just going to pass over once more to make sure nothing's blocked, and then we'll be good to seed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That sort of goes all the way through. For those who are interested, I will show you my seeding technique, but it's nothing special. Ultimately, the seedlings or the carrots need to be thinned out to about 1 inch separation. So, seeing as they're quite annoying to germinate, they don't readily germinate. I just take a big clump in my hand like that. Where are we? And sort of pinch some in between my thumb and forefinger. And you want it so denser than you need, essentially. So then I just sort of run it through like that. So I don't know where you can start seeing from, but and as you roll your fingers like that, you drop seeds. And that's how I do it. I just go all the way through. So, once that's got the seed in the ground, I like to come over and close up the furrows with a rake, either just by tapping it or by scratching the furrows over each other. I'll do that in a second. Carrots, then, it's really about management, mostly of moisture, because they take quite a long time to germinate, anywhere between around 7 to 21 days, I would say. So yeah, I've just got to keep them wet, keep them covered, and I'll show you something else we do for that. And then we'll have a look at some examples of good and bad carrot germination. So, I'd like to talk a moment about standardization. Standardization meaning using standard bed sizes, using, basically the bed sizes mostly. We use here 10 meter beds, 30 inches wide, it's about 75-80 centimeters. Which is pretty standard for market gardening, and this is partly due to a lot of the tools coming as standard being roughly the same size as that, which means I'm able to do one pass to mark things rather than many passes. And then the last stage we do is using horticultural fleece. The reason I mentioned the standardization, we use the horticultural fleece to cover the beds to stop wind wicking away the moisture from the surface, and it's something I picked up from Charles Dowding, and to be honest it seems to make a surprisingly big difference. And when you have everything standardized and cut to 10 meters, there's no waste. I can just grab a sheet from over there, good to go. So I'll tuck that on, and we'll water it in. Just a couple more quick points. So with carrots you really need consistency is kind of the key. So you need to be watering them. What I do is twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening, which seems to be enough. But obviously if it rains heavily or rains a bit, you can sort of adjust what you do. But consistency is really the key for this. So what I've found is if you don't make it as easy as possible to do the watering, then it starts to, you just be like, oh, I'll do it later, and then you don't do it. So I installed that water pond butt type thing down there that you saw earlier, which is a lot closer than hauling it from over there, because we don't have hoses in the field here. We have irrigation, but it's not really good enough to just spot water areas, so it's better to have yourself a watering can that you can go over and just make sure it's there. So this one's 13 litres, and I put 2 on in the morning and 2 on in the evening, and that seems to be quite enough until you see germination. Well, it seemed quite dry, so we just put an extra watering can on. So that's watered in, looking great. Let's go have a look at some examples of carrot germination. So another thing to be said for using the fleece is weeds. If you look at these two were actually sowed for carrots, and frankly that was poor management that resulted in them not germinating. It was prior to when I installed the water point over there, so it was a bit too much effort to actually go and get the water, and so I just neglected it. And the same can be said for this one here. You can see a lot of it's coming up, but there are some large patches. So I don't know, a lot of these might be worth resowing, we're going to see. But I'll show you some better examples now. Here we have some fairly good consistency back in 4 rows before we started doing 5. And they're pretty well spaced as well. Starting to come out very nicely. And I'll show you down the bottom here ones that have just come up. Extremely nice germination rate. A lot coming up. And also, I think to note, is there are, apart from this bindweed here, which is very annoying, there are virtually no weeds in this bed. Big difference. So I hope you enjoyed that little carrot tutorial. I'll let you know how they come. So far so good. Yeah, hope it was helpful. If you have any comments or questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll try and get back to you. Thanks. Cheers guys.